Welcome to our Liechtenstein Financial Services podcast. In the Liechtenstein Financial Services podcast, we will explore the legal, regulatory and tax perspectives of banks, funds, asset managers and other participants in the Liechtenstein Financial Center. A production of PwC Liechtenstein. I'm Ilario Monti. I'm joined by my co-host Patrick Wiech as we dive into an important topic that is rapidly transforming the financial landscape in Liechtenstein: sustainability. As sustainability becomes increasingly important on a global scale, Liechtenstein is positioning itself as a leader in promoting green financial products and ESG integration. In this episode, we will explore how Liechtenstein can take advantage of these opportunities, how local companies are reacting to new regulatory frameworks like the Omnibus Proposal, and what steps can be taken to ensure the country remains competitive in an evolving global market. Joining us today is Simon Tribelhorn, Director of the Liechtenstein Bankers Association and Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Liechtenstein Finance Association. Simon brings a wealth of expertise in sustainable finance and policies.
Yeah, fantastic, Ilario. And I'm Patrick Wiech, and I'm also very excited to have Simon next to us, sharing insights on how sustainability initiatives can be integrated into Liechtenstein's economy and in particular into the financial services sector.
Welcome, Simon. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your connection to Liechtenstein?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation today. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk with you about sustainability and sustainability regulation. I'm the CEO of the Liechtenstein Banking Association, as you mentioned. I've been working now within the banking industry in Liechtenstein for around 20 years. Sustainability is not only close to my heart. We have sustainability besides digitalization as one of the key pillars in our banking center strategy, the so-called Roadmap 2025. We are now in the last year of this Roadmap 2025, and sustainability obviously is not only strategic-wise very important for us, but as well for the banks, for the member banks, to stay competitive as a banking center. And we see growing interests over the last 5-10 years from our clients. And it's not only a trend, it becomes more and more mainstream, and especially younger clients ask more and more for sustainable products.
Thank you, Simon. Let's start with a detailed discussion about sustainability in Liechtenstein. What is behind the Omnibus Proposal and how have companies in Liechtenstein reacted to it?
Well, difficult question to explain it in very short or very briefly in very short words. The Omnibus stands for a package to simplify the sustainability reporting. We have now seen the Omnibus, the so-called Omnibus 1, the proposal issued by the Commission. And in essence, it says that the reporting obligations shall be, in a sense, simplified, that only, well, there are 2 or 3 thresholds, that only companies with more than 1,000 employees have to report. Then you have another threshold, 50 million of revenue. And the third one is if you are above 25 million of balance sheet. Then you have to apply the reporting according to the CSRD. And if you are below these thresholds, then it's on a voluntary basis. So if you ask whether these simplifications, and another simplification is that there is a postponement for the so-called second and the third wave of companies which have to report according to CSRD. The postponement is you don't have to report in 2026 or 2027, but only in 2028. So there is a postponement of the reporting obligations for Wave 2 and Wave 3. So if you ask whether there is a, or what the reactions were in the financial services industry in Liechtenstein, I think it was very diverse and kind of mixed, because the big ones, they have already very costly implemented the regulatory reporting obligations. So it's a little bit too late for them. For the smaller ones, so the companies which are not obliged to report, for them it's a huge simplification.
Yeah, you're making a good point, Simon. So Omnibus is particularly focusing on reporting, right? So only the top of the iceberg, basically. And at the same time, the European regulations are increasing in terms of risk management. Yeah, new EBA guidelines are being published, which still trigger banks to implement new measures with regards to risk management. So in your opinion, what do you believe? Is Omnibus stopping the whole sustainability movement, or do you still think that despite all these new regulations and the Omnibus proposal, banks still have to think about sustainability quite carefully?
It doesn't stop the trend and the move towards sustainability at all. Because as I said in the beginning, I think people ask for more products which are sustainable, more financial services in that sense. So it doesn't stop the movement, and that's very important. It should simplify, as I said, the reporting burden, the regulatory burden. The question is more, does it help that from a bank point of view, you have more resources to allocate for new financial products and to steer the capital into the right direction? I think that's very essential. What we often hear from all kind of banks, not in Liechtenstein or not only in Liechtenstein, that you have a lot of resources to dedicate to fulfill the regulatory obligations. And you don't have the necessary resources to set up the services, to serve the clients, and to set up the new products. So what we have hoped for with all the regulation, that banks, service providers have more or can focus more on what we all, let's say, want with sustainability, that people invest in products, in services, in sectors which have a contribution in the sense of ESG or to fulfill the obligations according to the Paris Agreement, respectively the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's, in my view, not the case, because you have to focus, as a bank, you have to focus purely on regulation. So in a sense, it hinders to do what should be the case.
Green products play a key role in this transformation, yes. How can Liechtenstein support this transformation, this development as a country?
I think what we try to do at the level of the Banking Association to support our members in focusing, helping the clients investing into sustainable products, sustainable financial products. There we have the classification, Article 6, Article 8, Article 9. And what we see in the market, there is not enough of Article 9 investment products. On the other hand, as a bank, you are obliged to ask the sustainability preferences, and that has to go hand in hand, right? So if you ask the client, do you want to invest in sustainable products? What are your preferences? And the client says, yes, of course, I want to invest very sustainably. Then on the other hand, you have to have at hand kind of a portfolio or a universe of financial products which fulfill the Article 9 criteria, so to say. If you're not able to do that because you don't have the product universe and the portfolio, I think then it doesn't match, and you can't steer or help steering and helping the client to invest in these products. That's in my view, it's very simple. When you have to ask the preference of the client, what are your preferences, and the client decides to invest into sustainable products, then you have to be able to offer these kind of products.
Yeah, that's very interesting, actually. And do you believe, Simon, that the financial center in Liechtenstein can become more, let's say, competitive by introducing and promoting such sustainable products and solutions?
I think in the end, that's a question of are you relevant in the end as a service provider, as a bank, even as a banking center for your clients. How shall I frame it? If politics want the clients to invest into sustainable products and to move towards sustainability, and the younger clients, they certainly want to, and taking into account that over the next 20 years, a huge amount of money goes from one generation to the next one. And those clients, the next generations, they care about sustainability, they are very digital. So if you want to stay relevant in the future, you have to go that way, and you have to be yourself sustainable, and you have to offer these kind of products. Full stop. So for me, it's a question of whether you want to be competitive in the future, and that's at every level, at financial services level, the financial center level, at the company level. I think that's key to be relevant for them, for the next generation.
And Simon, how might current regulation affect investment advisory in these topics?
How do you mean that?
How they influence the decision of the next generation? How we can change our regulatory framework?
We haven't seen that much of products, right? So obviously the industry and we as a society, there was a need for a strong push from the politics. Regulation was needed. And now maybe the pendulum went maybe into the wrong direction. So too much regulation now. So what I wanted to say is regulation was important and was needed, but the pendulum came into that direction that we have now a regulation which is too complex for the banks to apply, for the asset managers to apply. And now hopefully the pendulum comes back, and Omnibus is gives quite a good signal that we come back with simplification, and that's why I said it's very very welcomed. So coming back to your question, yes, of course, it helps, but the calibration of regulation is very important.
That's interesting. Actually, you're mentioning the key driver of sustainable developments is regulatory needs, right? Driven by regulators. So do you feel in Liechtenstein there is also kind of an intrinsic or self-motivated motivation by the banks and asset managers to develop such products and steer towards a sustainable direction?
I think there's a huge self-motivation. Let's take service providers like our members, LTT, for example, or LLB, VP Bank. LGT was at the forefront when it comes to sustainable finance with the own rating, sustainability rating they developed. And that came from LGT itself because of the conviction that sustainability is not just a trend. It is what the next generation will ask for. We have to care about our environment, the society. So yes, I do believe there is a huge, there was a push needed for the whole entire financial services industry. And that's maybe a difference and where I'm really proud for to work in Liechtenstein, because there was the self-motivation coming from our biggest members.
Simon, the last question. Liechtenstein certainly has the potential to lead in sustainable finance. Despite the omnibus development and local regulators still continue progressing in regulatory requirements for ESG, such as new EBA guidelines with regards to risk management. Do you think that such regulation could also be a key driver for promoting ESG in Liechtenstein?
Maybe that not just for Liechtenstein in general. I do believe that ESG risk and ESG risk management forces banks to assess and manage ESG risks more transparent. And that helps in the end to steer the capital into the right direction, away from unsustainable sectors to more sustainable sectors. And that means in general, yes, it helps. It gives you guidelines. But as I mentioned, the calibration of regulation is key and is very important. That's true as well for risk and risk management. So I give you an example. Data availability. If the data are not available, and that's maybe the most important point. If sustainability data are not available, you can't measure the risks, and then it's just a regulation. Or we will end up just with another regulation, but you don't have the tools at hand to do your risk management on a solid basis, on a very solid ground, and fact-based, and then the real-world impact will be very limited. But you have, on the other hand, you have costs, and you have a regulatory burden for the practice. So it's very important to have the data, the important data are available. And then that's certainly the case, that then it helps because then you are able to do your risk management correctly and in a good way.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Patrick. Simon, thank you very much for these insightful explanations. It's clear that sustainability in Liechtenstein is heading in a strong direction toward a greener and more sustainable financial sector. The promotion of green products and sustainable investments presents a significant opportunities for the financial sectors to stand out in international markets. Liechtenstein has recognized that sustainability is not only an ecological responsibility but also an economic opportunity. Thank you very much, Simon.
Yeah, it's fantastic to hear actually, Simon, that you as the CEO of the Bankers Association in Liechtenstein support the sustainable movement, and that Liechtenstein as a country can kind of benefit also from your leadership in this direction. And yes, thanks for having us today. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was a huge pleasure.
From this basis, we will dive into new topics such as legal, regulatory, or other topics in future episodes. So stay tuned for our upcoming episodes. In the meantime, contact us for a personal exchange how Liechtenstein can fit into your agenda.